This is DW News Africa. Coming up on the program, Queen Elizabeth has died after 70 years on the throne. How will she be remembered across Africa?
Totally like a shock.
I'm bereaved.
I follow her since I was a child. So I must say it's very sad news.
She's lived a very historic, tremendous life, and I hope she can rest in peace.
The Queen's story cannot be told without Africa. We look at the relationship she had with many African countries. Also coming up, the raw impact of climate change on Africa and the failure of the West in showing their commitment. African leaders lashed out at industrialized nations for not showing up at a summit in the Dutch city of Rotterdam. It was dedicated to helping African nations adapt to the impact of climate change.
I think that as we made the effort to leave Africa and come to Rotterdam, it would have been easier for the Europeans and the others to also be here. After all, they're the main polluters of the planet.
Who's not at the table matters. And I think that's where the struggle is that we need to continue to see this as an existential threat for everyone and not for just one side of the world.
Hi, I'm Eddie Micah Jr., and you are welcome to the program. It is the end of an era. Queen Elizabeth died after a 70-year reign. Tributes have been pouring in from all over the world. We'll take a look at the Queen's relationship with Africa and what kind of legacy she leaves. But first, let's hear how people across the continent will remember her.
We'll miss her calm demeanor, her leadership as one of the few women leaders in the world, and also her contribution to global peace and development.
I remember her as the woman figure who is one of the women who made the whole world proud in this patriarchal world, yeah.
And during her reign, Ghana and most of African countries were still under colonialism. And we thought at a point she would have apologized to us based on what her people did to us, but she didn't. And all in all, we still have a peaceful relationship with her. We wish her farewell and may her soul rest in perfect peace.
She always wanted the world to be in peace, even though she's limited to how much influence she could have at the time, but I think she tried her best. I mean, nobody's perfect, but she tried her best. So I think in Africa we have a lot of respect for her.
I think they have to bring back all our jewelry and our gold and our diamonds that are in the crown. They have to bring back everything that they stripped from Africa.
She was 96 years old, so it's to be expected. She's lived a very historic, tremendous life, and I hope she can rest in peace.
I don't think the death of the Queen affects me because I'm pretty young and she's British, right? Yeah, she's British and I'm Kenyan. It does not affect me that much.
Clearly mixed reactions there. But one thing is for sure, the story of the Queen cannot be told without looking at the relationship she had with many African countries. Here's why.
Queen Elizabeth had a special relationship with Africa. She turned 21 on a visit to South Africa. And she was in Kenya when she heard that her father, King George VI, had died.
The grievous news of her father's death reached the young queen, now aged 25, at this lodge in the highlands of East Africa.
She returned home for her coronation.
The Archbishop lowers the 5-pound symbol of might and power, and as he places it upon the Queen's head and removes his hands, the assemblage in one voice cries, "God save the Queen."
During her 70-year reign, the Queen returned to Africa on numerous occasions. This is her visiting Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia in 1965. Prior to that, in 1956, the Queen had been in Nigeria. In 1961, she made her first trip to Ghana. Elizabeth toured Uganda in 1954 and in 2007. She also visited Ethiopia, but not the more recent Commonwealth members, Rwanda, Gabon, Togo or Cameroon. Over the decades, the Queen met most of Africa's notable leaders, including Nelson Mandela, Julius Nyerere, Mobutu Sese Seko and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. In some African countries, places, institutions and streets carried Queen Elizabeth's name for many decades.
Well, the Queen also touched many lives. We spoke to one woman in Ghana who met her in person when receiving the Young Leaders Award, an award for young people across the Commonwealth who dedicate their lives to serve the communities in unique ways. Amina Bawa shares her memories of the Queen with us.
The news of her passing is so devastating, but again, an opportunity for us to reminisce and celebrate her long-lasting legacy. Her unmatched humility, dignity and values of service will continue to live in me, especially and the lives of the young people she inspired. The one-on-one posture in the award presentation is one that reminds me of how my grandmother was giving me the last pesewa in the house just to persuade me to go to school. I was actually shedding tears while receiving the award from her. The moment of touching her hand is one that made me feel I had received some new breath of life. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I will forever cherish. So my thoughts of sympathy are with the royal family and the English people. May her beautiful soul be blessed.
Now, we've invited Macharia Munene, historian, professor and foreign policy expert at the United States International University, Africa, based in Nairobi, Kenya. Hello and welcome to the program, sir. Now, we've been hearing some mixed reactions from across the continent. What kind of legacy do you think the Queen leaves behind in Africa?
The continuity of British presence as the head of the Commonwealth, in which many of the former British colonies are members by choice. And she was that symbol. So, and very personable person, and people liked her. But the Commonwealth is the main legacy that she leaves. That's very positive. The other part being the colonial part as the monarch during colonial period towards the last decade of colonialism may not be very pleasant. But the transition from colonialism to independence and then involvement in the Commonwealth goes to her. It gives her some credit.
I mean, you touched a bit on that because, yes, in a way, she represented a country that colonized parts of Africa. But what role did she play in Africa's fight for independence from British colonial rule?
Well, she did not play a role in the struggle for independence. She was a recipient of the struggle itself. The good thing about her is that she took it in stride. Of course, the prime minister and minister are the ones who dealt with the issue. And the fact that she became a queen when she was in Kenya watching some animals gives her a little bit of relevance, particularly to Kenyans and to other people. But she did not play, as far as I know, a role in the decolonization. She was a recipient of the struggle against colonialism, and she took it very well.
Definitely well put on your side, but some say she wasn't really in opposition to it just after she started her rule. She, as one would describe, say, was open to the idea of it happening.
Yes, I think she was open to the idea, being a young lady who was just trying to enjoy herself, and then something happens. It was very good of her to adjust to the realities of the time. And I think her handling of the Commonwealth, the evolving Commonwealth, gives some respect that she seemed to blend very well with the new independent countries and make them feel that they are welcome in the Commonwealth or as part of it. So she made them feel good and acceptable, which was a credit to her. And for that reason, she's fairly popular. And, in fact, the Commonwealth expanded when she was there. So we had countries like Mozambique and Rwanda join, although they never were British colonies, because of the way it appeared to be good.
You mentioned earlier how frequently she was visiting the continent. Kenya is one of the countries she was at, particularly when she heard of the news of the death of her father. How would you describe her overall personal relationship with the African continent?
Generally good. Many people did not take personal issues with her. She was a symbol of a system that was not very good during colonial times. But as a person, I don't think people took anger on her, took the anger on her. They just saw her as a symbol of a system that was not very good. And since the people also understand that the people who runs the country is really the Prime Minister and the ministers, and she's just symbolic of a long-lasting system of the British imperialism. And as the head, the titular head, well, she just looked good to the point that some other people sometimes try to emulate her because she looked good. But there is no animosity towards her as a person.
Okay, not her as a person, but the system that she was part of. But Professor Macharia Munene, historian and foreign policy expert in Nairobi, Kenya, thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much.